Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Some massive news for Sherrone Moore and this Michigan football program as we got our next defensive backs coach heading into that 2024 year, and that is former Texans safety coach Stephen Adegoke. And we talked a little bit about him yesterday as being an emerging name for this position. We liked a lot of the things that he brought to the table. Want to dive in to Stephen Adegoke, kind of give you guys some of the reasons I'm a big fan of this hire. Would love to hear from you guys in the comment section. Before we get into it, just want to say thank you to you guys. And as a Michigan fan, it has been a wild last 2 weeks with Sherrone Moore hiring this staff around him. Cannot thank you guys enough for all the support you guys have shown the boys. It's been a blast discussing these candidates, having those conversations with you guys in the comment section. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Again, cannot thank you guys enough for all the support. This is a Michigan football program. There is nothing more in this world I love talking more about than this team. So can't thank you guys enough for rocking with it. We'll continue to update you guys as Sherrone Moore in this Michigan program continue to make these hires. But without further ado, let's get into Stephen Adegoke. And I think the first thing we got to do is give a little background of what Stephen Adegoke has done during his coaching career. And that's really the first thing that stands out is this is a rising star in the coaching industry. Stopped playing football in 2018 as a Mississippi State safety. He immediately goes to Florida as a graduate assistant, comes to Michigan and worked with that defensive back room in 2021, which I think is huge because that is really when you saw this program on the defensive side of the football really change the direction of where they were going. He goes to the 49ers as a quality controls coach. DeMeco Ryans was the DC, gets the job at the Houston Texans, and DeMeco Ryans' first call was to a guy like Stephen Adegoke to come to the Houston Texans and coach that safety position. And I think that's really the first thing you want to start with is this is a guy that both DeMeco Ryans obviously loved, took him to Houston with him as he took the head coaching job, and obviously Sherrone Moore really likes, right? Bringing him back to coach the defensive backs room for this Michigan team in 2024. Couple things to get into. One, I think the biggest thing is the blend of the NFL and college experience. Michigan, to be quite frank, has had a ton of success going to the NFL and hiring from that area. And they come into the college level and they have just elevated this Michigan defense to a massive extent. And I think you expect the exact same things for a guy like Stephen Adegoke. And I think the first thing that really stands out is, and this is a guy that finished playing in 2018 and is now going to be a defensive backs coach for the Michigan Wolverines in 2024. He is very highly thought of in the coaching industry. And I think that is extremely important. When you go to evaluate these coaching hires, the best thing you can do is take a look at how other coaches think of guys, right? And Stephen Adegoke, a guy that Sherrone Moore felt strongly enough to go out to the Houston Texans and bring back to Michigan after having worked with him. And then you look at a guy like DeMeco Ryans, who Stephen Adegoke worked under for the 49ers. When DeMeco Ryans took that job as the head coach of the Houston Texans, I mean, he took him with him to the Houston Texans. So two guys in DeMeco Ryans and Sherrone Moore, both coaches I have a ton of respect for. If they like Stephen Adegoke that much, I think a lot of Michigan fans should certainly like Stephen Adegoke as well. And again, you highlight the familiarity he has with some of the guys that are already on this roster and the schematics that we want to see continue for this Michigan defensive backer, right? He was with Rod Moore, with guys like Makari Page. From what I read, played a role in recruiting Will Johnson out of high school. Not only does he have familiarity with the players that are on this roster heading into that 2024 year, he has familiarity with the scheme. And so you talk about one of the biggest goals for Michigan hiring on the defensive side of the football is continuing the scheme that has revolutionized this Michigan defense over the 3 years with Mike McDonald and Jesse Minter. You do that with a guy like Wink Martindale, who again was in a large way kind of a mentor to guys like Minter and McDonald. And then you go out and get a defensive backs coach that was with this Michigan program in 2021 when they were installing this offense. And the last thing I think you want to talk about, and something that we talked about a lot in kind of evaluating coaching hires, is can they get it done on the recruiting trail? Right? We had a lot of conversation regarding the hire of Wink Martindale. And the one question you had was not how good of a defensive-minded coach he is, because we know what the NFL thinks of him. phenomenal defensive-minded coach. You feel really good about the schematics of this Michigan defense going into 2024. I think the one question was, can you get it going on the recruiting trail? And although you don't have a strong track record for Stephen Adegoke because he's never been a position coach at the college level yet, you feel pretty good about the recruiting chops because he's got two things going for him. One, young recruiting energy. You see the best recruiters at the college football level often being young guys that can relate to these high school kids. And you look at the relationships he's built with Makari Page, Rod Moore, Will Johnson, you feel good about what Stephen Adegoke can bring from a relationship standpoint and the young energy that he's going to have on the recruiting trail. But more importantly, having that NFL background, I think, is a massive storyline on the recruiting trail. You look at where kids want to go and play their next level of college football. They want to go to programs. Yes, NIL, I'm not going to say NIL doesn't play a factor, but still some of the biggest goals that they have are going to a program that can win championships and then going to a program that's going to put them into the NFL. And a guy like Stephen Adegoke, who takes over the Houston Texans, helps them make the playoffs for the first time in a very long time, had a ton of success with that defensive back room. You feel good about playing for a coach that can develop you, but more importantly, has been around the NFL, knows what it looks like, knows what it takes. And you combine that with Wink Martindale, a guy that has had a ton of success in the NFL. You're starting to sell these kids up. Hey, this is a program where we just put 18 guys into the NFL Combine, might break a record for how many draft picks that we put out. And we have experience as coaches in the NFL. We know what it looks like. We know what NFL teams look for. I think that's a massive, massive point on the recruiting trail as well. You look at the boxes that you wanted to see Michigan check. One, young recruiting energy. I think Stephen Adegoke certainly has that. The next one you look at is the continuity of this Michigan defense, having been around there in 2021, certainly checks that box. And the last box you want to check is, are they a good football coach? And the fact that Sherrone Moore and D'Amico Ryans both think very highly of Stephen Adegoke, I think certainly checks that box as well. I think this is a phenomenal hire for Michigan. Obviously, a few more names that we're going after. Greg Scruggs on the defensive line, Brian Jean-Mary in the linebackers room. You guys are now on the clock. We'll continue to cover this one as it plays out. Again, can't thank you guys enough for rocking with the fellas. It's been a wild last 2 weeks. It's going to be a wild next couple of weeks as we go into spring camp. We'll continue to cover this coaching carousel, cover this coaching staff. Appreciate y'all rocking with the boys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later. Go Blue.